You are sitting in a crowded room. The noise level is deafening. People are laughing. Conversations are overlapping. Suddenly, your vision completely blurs. Your eyes lock onto a blank, empty wall. You stop blinking. Your jaw slightly drops. You hear nothing. A friend calls your name. You do not respond. They call it a second time. Silence. They wave a hand directly in front of your face. You are entirely paralyzed. You finally snap out of it. A hot flush of deep embarrassment hits your face. You quickly apologize for being so rude. You think you are losing your cognitive grip. Society constantly tells you to stay mindful. They preach about being fiercely present in the moment. You label yourself as an absent-minded, detached failure. You assume your attention span is severely damaged. You worry that you are developing early cognitive decline. You feel incredibly guilty for ignoring the people around you. You think your brain is slowly shutting down forever. Stop. You are completely wrong about this silent paralysis. This is not a mental flaw. You are not experiencing a toxic attention deficit. This embarrassing blank stare is actually a biological masterpiece. Science identifies this exact behavior as dissociation. But it is not a modern psychological weakness. It is a highly aggressive biological shield. You just experienced a vital cognitive unplugging. Your limbs went numb. Your hearing was muted. Your optic nerves intentionally blurred your vision. Do you think this proves your mind is severely broken? This is where modern productivity culture completely deceives you. They demand relentless focus. They tell you to force yourself back into reality. But your central nervous system ignores their toxic hustle advice. It only cares about preventing a total system crash. Your brain is executing a desperate, brilliant survival maneuver. It violently disconnects your consciousness from an overwhelming environment. You feel completely numb because your body is running an ancient preservation protocol. Your brain is aggressively defending you against a massive tsunami of sensory data. It has forcibly activated a biological screensaver mode. This mechanism is designed to protect your fragile neural circuits. Your brain prioritizes your sanity over social etiquette. You are sitting in a noisy, modern gathering, but your nervous system is actively blocking a catastrophic cognitive fire. It prefers to make you look temporarily foolish. It will endure the social embarrassment to save your delicate neurons. The blank stare is not a sign of a failing mind. It is an impenetrable defensive wall operating flawlessly. Your body is forcefully rebelling against a hyper-stimulating era. You are not losing your grip on reality. Your biological hardware is just pulling the emergency brake. You repeatedly ask yourself why your mind suddenly evaporates into thin air. You aggressively peel back the cruel, heavy layers of your own internal shame. Do you experience this humiliating blank stare because you are a fundamentally boring person? No. Do you totally detach from lively conversations because you severely lack basic human empathy? Incorrect. Do you suffer from this sudden cognitive freezing because your intellectual capacity is permanently declining? Completely wrong. But this is exactly where the modern mindfulness industry completely betrays you. They viciously label your involuntary mental absence as a toxic character flaw. Society demands constant, seamless interaction at all times. You falsely believe you must stay socially smooth and highly engaged 24 hours a day. But this relentless pursuit of social perfection is a deadly neurotoxin. From the outside, you simply look like a highly disrespectful individual intentionally ignoring a basic social interaction. You look completely disengaged. But underneath your skull, A magnificent neurological intervention is actively taking place. In 2020, neuroscientists at Stanford University thoroughly mapped this exact state of profound biological disconnection. The scientific verdict is an absolute revelation. Your nervous system is actively preventing a catastrophic biological short circuit. Your brain is equipped with a highly sophisticated sensory gating mechanism. It is heavily regulated by the dorsal vagal complex. When you sit in a visually chaotic room for hours, your brain does not passively absorb the noise. It actively calculates the sheer, crushing volume of auditory and visual stimuli. Every single flashing light, every overlapping voice, every subtle facial expression requires massive metabolic energy to decode. When this massive data stream violently exceeds your neurological bandwidth, your brain takes immediate executive action. It forcibly restricts blood flow to your visual cortex, intentionally blurring your physical surroundings. Your primal brain classifies a crowded, noisy dinner party not as a fun celebration, but as a severe neurotoxic threat. From a purely alien, biological perspective, forcing your fragile nervous system to process constant, meaningless chatter is a deeply unnatural poison. Therefore, your parasympathetic nervous system deliberately pulls the internal power plug. It initiates a clinical state of dissociation. The sudden numbness in your limbs and the empty gaze are instantly deployed as a brilliant defensive shield. Your physical body refuses to let you burn your own neural pathways to the ground. It aggressively hijacks your consciousness to enforce a mandatory, non-negotiable cooling period. Your hyperactive survival mechanism captures this overwhelming sensory input, violently upgrading it to a critical, life-threatening emergency. If we perfectly isolate the environmental variable, your biological hardware is performing an absolute miracle of self-preservation. If you completely remove the crushing, artificial weight of modern social obligations, your body functions with absolute, breathtaking perfection. Not a single healthy brain can flawlessly process endless overlapping conversations because it is constantly flooded with overwhelming sensory noise. Your brain is completely normal. It is absolutely inevitable that your exhausted cognitive centers will initiate this massive system shutdown. You are not a defective communicator failing at basic human interaction. You are an incredibly sophisticated organism executing a flawless preservation protocol. But this temporary shutdown is only the shallow surface. What your exhausted nervous system is secretly orchestrating behind this blank stare is infinitely more majestic. Why does a highly evolved human mind willingly turn itself into a lifeless statue during a simple conversation? To understand this profound paradox, we must abruptly rip you out of your modern dinner party and drop you directly into a brutal, unforgiving landscape 300,000 years ago. In that terrifying prehistoric epoch, the ultimate invisible enemy was not a missed text message, a looming corporate deadline, or the crushing pressure of digital networking. The real threat was the lethal exhaustion of constant, unbroken vigilance. Your ancient ancestors lived in very small, tightly knit tribes. They processed a remarkably limited amount of sensory information every single day. A subtle rustling bush meant immediate danger. A sudden sharp cry meant a violent attack. Their primal nervous systems were perfectly calibrated for vast, uninterrupted hours of absolute silence, which were only occasionally broken by brief moments of intense terror. Missing a critical auditory signal meant absolute biological death. Fast forward to this exact present moment. Your physical biological hardware has not upgraded a single line of its primary defensive code. it is still aggressively running that exact same 3 million-year-old sensory software deep inside your skull. However, the modern social environment has forcefully injected a lethal, terrifying new enemy. We call it the toxic culture of constant social engagement. Society ruthlessly demands that you effortlessly process the facial micro-expressions of 50 different coworkers. It violently forces you to simultaneously decode sarcastic jokes, loud background music, and multiple overlapping conversations without taking a single break. The sheer, overwhelming volume of this auditory and visual garbage aggressively bombarding your cerebral cortex is mathematically impossible to sustain. You are violently forcing a fragile, Paleolithic brain to function as a hyperactive fiber optic network. Therefore, your nervous system is literally drowning in an invisible, relentless tsunami of cognitive exhaustion. You are not a lazy, disrespectful participant at a modern social gathering. Biologically speaking, you are a deeply exhausted organism, desperately retreating into a dark, silent cave to survive a raging sensory blizzard. When your optic nerve finally detects the terrifying overload of a chaotic, brightly lit room, your primal radar system violently hijacks your conscious, logical mind. It instantly, forcefully severs the neural connection to your advanced prefrontal cortex. It aggressively plunges your entire waking consciousness into a deep, protective microcoma in a fraction of a millisecond. It desperately commands your eyes to completely glaze over. It wipes your overloaded working memory totally clean. It completely shuts down your verbal processing centers. It commands your physical muscles to freeze in place. Every single time your vision suddenly blurs in the middle of a loud restaurant, your body is executing a flawless, historically proven preservation protocol. Every single time you mistakenly ignore a close friend calling your name, your highly intelligent nervous system is actively saving you from burning alive in a toxic sensory fire. Every single time you feel that embarrassing mental blankness, your exhausted vagus nerve is fiercely pulling the ultimate biological emergency brake. You think your brain is fundamentally broken because you zone out and stare at a wall? This is the exact part where modern social expectations have entirely misunderstood the profound, majestic brilliance of human anatomy. What society carelessly labels as a rude, pathological disconnection is actually a magnificent biological triumph. Your hypersensitive neural pathways are not failing, degrading, or breaking down at all. They are aggressively, brilliantly adapting to keep you perfectly intact in a profoundly unnatural, hyper-demanding ecosystem. Your body is forcefully establishing an impenetrable biological fortress to strictly ensure you never suffer permanent cognitive damage in this noisy era. Zoning out completely is not a modern psychological sickness. It is an evolutionary masterpiece hiding in plain sight. It is the majestic, silent echo of your ancestors, forcefully pulling you into the shadows, strictly to keep your fragile mind perfectly alive. You viciously punish yourself for this bizarre, uncontrollable mental exit. You sit frozen at a lively dinner table, desperately staring at a blank wall, deeply feeling the crushing weight of public humiliation bearing down heavily upon your tense shoulders. You assume everyone around you is harshly judging your rude, pathetic absence. You think they see a broken, antisocial weirdo who lacks the basic human decency to actively participate in a simple conversation. You relentlessly label yourself as a terrible friend, a highly distracted listener, and a socially incompetent failure. You firmly believe you are intentionally destroying your own valuable relationships, severely damaging your social reputation, and allowing a selfish mental glitch to completely ruin the collective mood. You aggressively convince yourself that you must constantly perform, must always smile gracefully, and must endlessly entertain others in this flawlessly polished, highly demanding modern society. But no. Your nervous system just initiated a supreme lockdown. The threat was real. You are entirely safe. The profound truth is that society has maliciously constructed a deeply toxic illusion of seamless, infinite, emotional availability. We blindly demand that a fragile biological organism remains perfectly engaged, endlessly empathetic, and constantly responsive 24 hours a day, while actively processing thousands of complex microfacial expressions. When your body physically cuts the internal cognitive power, it is violently breaking the exhausting illusion of this toxic social panopticon. Your overprotective vagus nerve is absolutely not ruining your friendships. It is desperately attempting to negotiate the impossible, soul-crushing demands of this noisy, modern ecosystem. It physically forces you to completely zone out, strictly so you can momentarily survive the agonizing buildup of chronic sensory burnout. Furthermore, let us apply a fair, brutally honest valuation to your silent public humiliation. You are absolutely terrified that people are secretly whispering about your awkward, extended, blank stare. You truly think your clumsy, frozen posture is permanently recorded in the critical minds of every passing colleague. But the neurological reality is far more forgiving, and it is deeply liberating. The fragile working memory of the people sitting right next to you is already completely overflowing with their own exhausting cortisol spikes, their own agonizing physical insecurities, and their own silent cognitive fatigue. Within 15 seconds, their overloaded hippocampi will automatically delete the visual memory of your temporary absence, strictly to make room for their own personal survival calculations. You are a completely invisible background character in their chaotic mental theater. Your microscopic social glitch is entirely meaningless to their survival. All of that immense societal pressure, all of that paralyzing fear of harsh judgment, all of that ruthless internal self-abuse instantly evaporates under the cold, precise lens of modern neurobiology. You ruthlessly force your fragile body to endlessly smile, to maintain intense eye contact, to project absolute social perfection while your internal nervous system is literally catching on fire. The heavy blast doors drop. The power grid fails. You are perfectly okay. You cannot rewrite the ancient wiring of your vagal nerve. The deafening noise of the modern world will not stop. You will inevitably zone out again at another crowded table. Your overloaded vision will slowly blur into the background imagery. Your mind will gently retreat into the quiet internal shadows. You will hear your name and remain completely, physically silent. The familiar wave of toxic social guilt will try to surface. You will be tempted to apologize for your severely broken attention. But you now possess the profound truth of your own biology. You finally understand the silent sanctuary inside your own heavy skull. This detached brain is absolutely not your bitter social enemy. It is a deeply devoted guardian protecting your fragile neural ecology. It actively builds a biological fortress to shield your delicate sanity. It willingly sacrifices your polite persona for your absolute psychological survival. It forces a sudden cognitive blackout rather than risking total sensory burnout. Therefore, you must stop fighting your own strict biological boundaries. You must stop mourning the loss of a flawless social identity. You are not a tireless machine built for endless human consumption. You are a profoundly sensitive organism requiring frequent moments of dark silence. The next time your mind abruptly pulls the internal power plug, do not panic over your sudden lack of social awareness. Do not silently condemn yourself as a highly defective human friend. Do not attempt to forcefully drag your waking consciousness back immediately. Allow the sudden heavy numbness to simply wash over your body. Accept the mental silence without applying any toxic moral judgment. Take a slow and deliberate breath inside your temporary cognitive void. Appreciate the thick biological blast doors protecting your fragile waking awareness. Remind yourself that constant emotional availability is a completely unnatural expectation. You have the sovereign biological right to temporarily disappear from existence. You have the absolute right to enforce an invisible social boundary. You are entirely allowed to disconnect from a hyperactive, demanding room. You are fully allowed to be temporarily out of digital reach. You are allowed to exist within your own quiet internal fortress. Zoning out completely is a sacred act of extreme self-preservation. This brilliant nervous system is aggressively defending your precious internal peace. Let it protect you.